What's going on, YouTube? So if you follow me regularly, this is going to be very different from my normal stuff. Um, but I need to make a video for me, probably mostly for me, maybe for other people. Anyway, so real quick on me, my personal life that I don't usually put out there much. I'm retiring from the Army. Today is Thursday, January 15th. Been on terminal leave since December 2nd, and I've got I go till February 28th, I'm on terminal leave. So, don't have a job, right? Which sucks. So that's why I say this is probably more for me and my venting than it is for anybody else, but maybe if somebody else out there is going through what I'm going through, um, maybe it'll help you figure something out. Or at least let you know you're not alone because this sucks. So, real quick on me, if you're just following into this, I am a retiring, I guess technically still retiring infantry officer. I enlisted in the National Guard in 1997. Started out as a helicopter mechanic. Switched over to the infantry in the summer of 2000. I was in college when 9/11 happened. I commissioned in December of 2002, went on active duty. Um, Long story short on the career, did infantry officer things. 3 tours to Afghanistan, 2 to Iraq, an operational tour in Saudi Arabia as an advisor. I'll admit, late getting my Ranger tab. Got mine as a captain. I suck at push-ups. Um, Instructor time, XOS3 time, all those things. Did all the things an infantry officer is supposed to do. I was a CSL Select battalion commander. I'm in Columbus, Georgia area. Commanded an OSA battalion on Fort Benning. And then after that, going into that, I knew I wasn't going to be an O6. I had been in 3rd SFAB before that. Long story short, I based on my file coming out of there, going into battalion command, I knew I was an extreme long shot, short of war kicking off, that I was not going to make O6. So I started trying to position myself for that. Fort Benning's got all the ACMs are backed in there with the ACMs. I know the Army's transforming now, and I'm behind on it, so I'm not even going to pretend that I know what the heck is going on. So I went over to ACM Armor. Actually, they had a job in the market for the cavalry dude, and I got hired by a nice colonel. And then 2 days after the market closed, the infantry commandant said, "No, you're going to come work for me." He said it nicer than that, but I did. All right, so when I left battalion command in the summer of 23, I went over there to work for that infantry commandant who only had a couple months left in the seat, and he actually retired out of that job. But while he was there, I sat down with him and I said, "Hey, sir, here's what I think about my file. I've probably been lied to for the last 2 years and told that if I worked hard and did good and got 2 top blocks, I would be an O6. So he looked at my file and he saw the same thing I did. There was no way in hell I was going to be an O6. So I said, "Roger that." So I started positioning myself to get a job. And I kind of started thinking about it. And you're right, this summer of 23, right? So Biden's the president at the time. Started thinking about it. What I wanted to do, I built a pace plan. I was one of these guys that when I hung up the uniform, I didn't want to put the uniform back on. So my primary thing, if you look at my channel, you'll figure out I'm a competition shooter. So I wanted to get into the firearm space. So I emailed a couple people I didn't know them, podcasts I follow, but hey, put yourself out there, right? And they were really nice and talked to me about how to get in the industry and all these things. And then, so I kind of started maneuvering myself that way, started trying to make some connections. It didn't work very well. And Columbus, Georgia, which is where we wanted to stay, because my wife and I have been married we just had our 23rd anniversary now. We've been married as long as I was in the Army. 26. We had our 24th, no, 23rd, yeah. 23rd anniversary. We were in our 15th house, and she's done moving. Fine. Normally, that's fine with Columbus, Georgia. Fast forward a couple months, If you Google my name, it's not hard to figure out. In January of 24, the commander of the MCOE decided to suspend the 5th RTB commander, and I got set up there. I was supposed to be for a couple months and ended up staying up there for 14 months, which was interesting, but it sucked. Like I said, been through several deployments, and even though it wasn't a deployment, it was the worst deployment I'd ever been on. One, because I was the only one deployed. My tempo up there is when classes weren't back to back. When classes were back to back, I was up there for 6 weeks straight. But when classes weren't back to back, I was up there for 25 days every 28. So I was basically just constantly cycling through TDY. Everybody else goes home to their family. They're doing family stuff. My family's 3 hours away in Columbus, and it's not an easy 3 hours because you got to drive through Atlanta. So I loved the job. Don't get me wrong. I look on that job finally. It was not a fun place to be. The guys mostly didn't want me there. We came to terms eventually. I had a good command sergeant major. I had a couple pretty decent majors. The company commanders were solid, and like anywhere else, 90% of the ranger instructors were awesome dudes, and and we had a good time, and we made rangers. And I'll be honest, it was the first time in my career I felt like I belonged in the ranger community. Like I said, got my tab late as a captain. At that point, it felt like a check the box thing, not like a monumental achievement. So it was interesting for me to go up there then and do that, and finally get to jump out of airplanes and helicopters and do all those fun things. Anyway, got back from that in March of 25. And they went back to the infantry commandant's office, new commandant, third one, since I've technically been assigned to the commandant's office. But the command sergeant major was the same one that was there when I left, and the deputy was the same, and of course all the civilians are the same. And they were nice to me, and I don't think it was a hey you suck go away. I think it was truly a being nice to me. I went and got some surgeries I needed to get done. I got a bunch of medical work that I'd been putting off. You should not go to airborne school in 2000 and then not jump out of airplanes again until you're in your mid 40s. It's hard on your body. So I had a lot of injuries that had been nagging me. So I got some stuff worked on. I got to do some stuff I didn't get to do, and I got to spend some time with the wife and kids. So I did things right, and then in the summer, if you remember, if you're in the Army, you remember that was about the time, obviously, President Trump, current president, was elected then. They start cutting back on civilian positions. They start cutting back on time off. There's a new narrative coming out of D.C. on what things should and shouldn't be. And Fort Benning and Ranger School take the brunt of that. So it was interesting times. But for me, I was suddenly out of all of that, which sucks. If you've been a commander, you know that the night you hand off the guidon or the colors is just weird always, doesn't matter how many times you've done it. But you suddenly go from being an extremely important person to a nobody. And for a couple of weeks, people text you and tell you you were awesome and say thanks, and then it all goes quiet. So I did what I thought I should do. I talked to a few mentors I have around Fort Benning, and they said, "Hey, go get your PMP. Maybe do some Lean Six stuff and find you a skill bridge." And this is when the skill bridge, they published the new guidance on it, which for senior folks, we only got 60 days. So what are the guidance? If you're young, you can have 4 months. If you're senior, you can have 60 days. If you're in the middle there, you can have 90 days. And I couldn't tell you what it is today, if it's changed again or not. Like I said, I'm unplugged from the Army now. So I did a skill bridge. Columbus, Georgia, Finn Pickens. I'm sorry, rewind. Back in 2023, primary, I did what the Army told me to do, about the PACE plan, primary, firearms industry. Alternate, other corporate job, but not Army, not government. Contingency would be a contractor on Fort Benning or contract, something like that. I've been around XCTCs and things like that. I've been around tons of different things. There's a lot of contracting out there that's not on base, but I would have gone on base. And then my emergency was BDA civilian. While I was up at ARTB and talking to people, that PACE plan shuffled, and I started looking heavily at contracting and DoD civilian, DOA, DoD civilian jobs. Entered current administration. The Doge happens. People get sent home. Obviously, people are going back to work everywhere across the United States, not just in the government. So the landscape changes. And if you, like today, like I got on USA Jobs yesterday. Unless I want to be a stalker or bagger in the commissary or work in the PX, or I suddenly develop a medical degree, there are no jobs offered on Fort Benning right now in USA Jobs that I can find. Obviously, I could go be an ICE agent. Yeah, this is like a week removed from the Minnesota event. It's not high on my list to go be a law enforcement agent, though I did look up being an air marshal yesterday, but I'm too old for that. If you're 40s, you're too old to be an FBI agent or an ICE agent or a U.S. Marshal or an air marshal or anything like that. DEA agent, look that one up too. Yeah, and I'm certainly not interested in going to put on a uniform and be a rookie police officer on the streets of Columbus. My wife comes from a law enforcement family and she's forbid that. So I also don't really want to do it. So that was my headspace last summer. I was seeing all this go down. So Columbus, Georgia has a couple things. At the time, they were Synovus. You had this. Synovus is a, long story short, they're a regional bank in the southeast, and one of their three corporate headquarters is here in Columbus because they originated as the Columbus Bank and Trust. You've got Aflac. This is OG Aflac here. Aflac started in Columbus. They obviously are worldwide now, but you do have an Aflac campus here. The other big campus you have here in Columbus is Pratt and Whitney, which is a subsidiary of Raytheon. And I really didn't give them, they have a skill bridge program. I didn't really give them much of a look because everybody was pointing towards Synovus. Excuse me. And to my understanding, and I'm right after looking at it, Pratt and Whitney is a manufacturing and production facility. So there is corporate leadership there, but they've got a forge. They build engines. They rebuild engines. It is a manufacturing facility. If you blow the bubble out, you've got Auburn and Opelika. To get to Auburn's about an hour from my house. I've got LaGrange up north, and then Noonan as you go towards Atlanta. Noonan's about an hour to the north. There's really nothing to the east. Macon's about an hour and a half, and not a good hour and a half. And then, just FYI, if you don't know, to get from Columbus to the south edge of Atlanta is an hour and a half on a good day. And then, so if you're going to get a job in downtown Atlanta, that's a 2-hour commute one way. And like I said, 15 houses later, my wife doesn't want to move. So that's kind of my geographic fence. So I did my skill bridge internship. It ended up being great. I did all the Civil Tap stuff, which was interesting. I came out of there very upset. Just in case someone from Congress listens to this, here's Bob Stone's take on Civil Tap. The heart, just like everything Congress has mandated on the military, your heart was in the right place, but it's garbage. It's a waste of resources. It's a waste of money, and you're not getting what you're paying for. Go figure. It's the government. And for those that don't know, Soldier for Life Transition Assistance Program, Civil Tap, came about early in the GWAT because the government was tired of paying unemployment for soldiers getting out in the middle of GWAT. Bottom line, soldiers would do a couple deployments, they'd save up some money, they'd get out, and they had money to live off of, but they could still file for unemployment. So the Army came up with Civil Tap to help people find jobs, and that mechanism is now cheaper for the government than paying unemployment. As a retiree, I optionally left so we don't get unemployment. And then on that you have Skill Bridge, which is what I did, and you have career skills programs. Career skill programs are what it sounds like. It is a career skill. That is what the program was designed to be in the beginning. You can go be a CNC operator. There's 15 ways to get your CDL. You can become a home inspector. You can do home maintenance. There's all sorts of little programs in there that give you a skill that is marketable outside of the government, especially if you're an infantry officer and your job is being in charge. So yeah, so that's where you are. That's what you can do. So I didn't want to be a truck driver. I wanted actually being a CNC operator sounds really cool to me, but my wife doesn't want me to do that, and I get it. So yeah, so I did a skill bridge. Signed up for a PMP program through credentialing assistance, which now officers can no longer get because we have college educations, which nobody gives a shit about. So I got my PMP. I did a PMP boot camp, and then I worked in the project management center of Synovus Enterprise Project Services is what they call it internally. And I was only there 2 months, so not even long enough to really do anything with a project. Their projects are 99.9% software related. They have a completely separate real estate and construction department. The project I was in is 99.9% IT, Salesforce, credit data marts, credit lakes, data lakes, data marts, all these things that I had to learn what they were. So if you're a senior person and you're watching this, that is what senior people need out of skill bridge programs, is to learn how to speak the language of industry. All right. Yes, if you can do MDMP, you can do project management. There's some nuances, right? Nobody worries about invoices and budgets and stuff like that in MDMP. Probably not building very many pivot tables in MDMP, but you can Google all that and figure out how to do it once you get the job or once you get your foot in the door. So what is a skill bridge program? Well, put shortly, it's an extended interview. So basically the Army is letting you go do a 60 to 120 day extended interview at a company and learn their processes and see if you've got the right personality to fit in their organization. And if you're going on a skill bridge, you need to understand that entire time you're there is an interview. So if you're in there telling them that their systems are down, they don't know what they're doing, and you know how to do all this because you were whatever you were in the Army, you're probably not going to get a job offer coming out of there. Those were the guy I worked for in my internship, and he's a retired battalion commander. We got along great. But it was what it was, right? So he told me some of these horror stories of people that come through that really didn't fit. Yeah, and then they're checking, hey, can this person learn? Do they know do they understand their known unknowns? He watched me in the first meeting I sat in, the very few in-person meetings we did, sit there and write notes the entire time. He looked at me in front of everybody. He was like, "You just wrote 15 acronyms you didn't understand, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go Google them." Right? That's what you should do. You should take an interest and learn. So that was my internship, 60 days of that. It actually worked out really good. I got to study for my PMP a lot, and I got to compare their governance and how they do project management to the class I was taking, which is kind of good, kind of bad. What I didn't tell you about, though, is in July, so my internship started September 1st. The skill bridge had to get, because I was in 05, had to get signed off on by the 2-star, right? That takes time in the Army. That took, I think, 60 days to get his signature on it, to get through all the wickets to get his signature on it, and many, many pieces of paper. And then MCOM still didn't like it because he wet signed it. Get over it, MCOM. So that's what we did. But in the summer of 2025, Synovus announced a merger with Pinnacle Bank out of Nashville, 2 regional banks merging. You can Google it. There's a ton of information out there. They're now merged after 2 January. But the so what of that is, like any company going through a merger, they froze the majority of hiring, and then they went through a RIF right before Christmas. A reduction in force. They called it a RIF, layoffs, whatever you want to call it, right sizing. They did that. So bottom line is, where timing sucked for me. I would have had a job offer had I come in at a different time. During this, though, the project governance people knew they were going to have more projects because there's a ton of stuff that has to get done to bring these 2 banks' information together. It's not just a bunch of Word documents. It's totally different IT backbones that have to get merged. And so there's a bunch of work that has to be done. But the powers that be, the guy I worked for, the guy that controls the money is actually up there somewhere. He's not letting any money go. So when I left, we were 90% sure I was going to get brought on as a contract project manager, and you can be a contract project manager there for up to 2 years. So in all honesty, and this is my fault, 100% my fault, because they were telling me the whole time, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking. I was not looking hard for a job while I was in my skill bridge. I was focused on making a good impression there and earning my PMP, which, by the way, I went and tested 2 days after I got out of the internship and passed my PMP first shot. So when I left, it was a handshake. It was a, hey man, we can't wait to bring you on in January. I left Christmas, Halloween, October 31st, 2025. I left. Like I said, it was a handshake. Can't wait to bring you on. Here's this company we use for contract folks. They've got your resume. The woman that runs that called me. Hey, I've got you. We know who you are. We'll be in contact mid-December. I did what I was supposed to do, out-processed the Army correctly, cleared CIF, first time go, did all the things. And again, wasn't looking very hard. I was putting in a few fun applications, but I wasn't looking that hard. So maybe had put in, by December 1st, I had maybe put in 4 or 5 applications throughout the entire fall. My fault. Mid-December rolls around, I text the guy I know at Synovus. I'm like, hey man, just checking in with you. I'm actually out of the Army. I'm done. Or are we still looking good? And of course, the infamous text back, hey, I'll call you, comes back. Never good, right? Bottom line, money's not going to get let loose. He doesn't see an avenue to me getting hired. You really need to be pushing other applications. So I said, cool, right? Cool. He had been really good to me while I was there. He had helped me with rewriting. He's a hiring manager, so he sees resumes. Went over my resume with me again, talked to me about it, helped me use it with AI and run some AI stuff through it, all those things and formatting but again, it's his preference on our resume, not everybody's. So that conversation happened on December 9th, about a week after I had been on terminal leave. So obviously I went into panic mode. December 9th, great time to start figuring jobs out. So I started putting in applications. Like I said, today's January 15th. So between December 9th and Christmas, I put in, I'm looking at a Word document over here. I put in 29 applications in 11 days. I was looking at remote jobs. I went back and started looking at firearms jobs. I was looking at Pratt and Whitney. I've got some other stuff going on here. There's a Duracell plant. I put in an application out in LaGrange, put an application there. Oracle, which is all remote type stuff. And then I also did all of the, I before I talked to him, I went and did all the DoD contractors, GDIT, BAE, a couple others. And then I think it was around the 16th or 17th, I think it's the 17th of December, I sat in a job fair that was DoD contractor specific. And it was good, right? I got to meet some people, got some contacts who were, Lockheed Martin, blah, 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 got the recruiters. But the most important thing I learned there was what's happened in the government industry in the last year. So when the current administration, and for the record, I agree with their decision to bring everybody back to the office and to make the government smaller. I don't think they went about it the right way, but I agree with the ultimate decision to do it. What happened was all those people that were in remote government jobs quit and went to the defense industry to get remote jobs. It's a way, right? It's a way. So the reality, though, of the job market in January of 2026 is when the defense industry posts a remote job, they get 3,000 to 4,000 applications for it. Multiple defense contractors told me the exact same stuff. Low end is 2,000, sometimes as many as 6,000 or 7,000 applications for the job, depending on what it is. So a lot. So if you are, hey, them talking to me, when you read the job description, the requirements. If you don't meet every single one of those, you're not getting the job. And then everybody tells you, hey, take the job description, cut and paste it into AI, run your resume through AI, look at the comparison. So I started doing that. One, you're an info officer, you don't match any single job description of a job you would want. And for the record, I'm looking at jobs 80K and above. I've actually applied for some part-time stuff here in the spring just to keep some money rolling in until VA money and retirement kicks in. But I'm not even hearing back from those. So it's frustrating. AI. I think you got to figure out how to use AI. The first couple times I took my resume and ran it through AI, it would say, you are this job, but here's what you need to change. And it would take all of my $30 million budget responsible for this many people and it would take all of the hard data out of it and compress it into that large organization, refined and it turned into well, that's the opposite of what every hiring manager I've talked to says, right? Which is frustrating with AI. So that was frustrating. And then the other thing with AI was when it would start putting out lies. It would say, hey, say this. And everybody you talk to says if you have a number or a measurable achievement in your resume, be prepared to defend that in an interview. Step 1, get to interview. Step 2, defend resume and interview. But anyway, there's probably more steps than that. So frustration with AI. I've kind of gotten better with it over times, but this again, simple tap, you suck. This is stuff we should be doing. This is, these are skills you should be teaching people in Siffle Tap rather than telling them how to circumvent the VA system over and over and over again. There's some great people there. There's some also not great people. So that took me to December. So I have daughters, they came out of school. And by the way, I have a Word document of every job I've applied for since this process started, which looking back, I'm glad I did this. Otherwise, I'd have lost track and I'd be in even a worse headspace than I am. So I did that. And I know, by the way, the other thing, these hiring managers, how they work, not hiring managers, the recruiters, the ones I talk to in the defense industry anyway. And I talked to Lockheed Martin and GE Aerospace were the two main ones I talked to, a couple other ones as well. But they said, hey, here's, when you do that resume analysis I told you about, your resume, job description, 1-for-1 match for requirements, 60, 70, 80% match in nice to haves. Send me that with the both, and I'll make sure it gets on the hiring manager's desk. That's the only guarantee, and they'll do it for one. It's the only guarantee those recruiters are given right now. So if you burn your silver bullet of make sure it gets to hiring manager's desk, you're done, because that's the job you really want, even though you're not qualified for it. Your resume doesn't say you're qualified for it. You've burned your silver bullet. So that's not fun. So I did what I thought that was the right thing to do, and I took a break from Christmas I didn't put in any applications from Christmas to New Year's. Last application I put in 2025 was December 20th. I kept looking at job boards. My girls were home, doing that stuff. I kept looking at job boards, and at the end of the day, just not much was dropping. Not much was dropping at all. And then when everybody came back, the first was on like a Thursday, second, third, fourth. So the 5th of January, that Monday after the first, job boards started populating again, which makes sense in industry. All right. So since then, from the 6th to today, so 9 days, I've put in another 11 applications and continuing to push. But I think I'm putting in smarter applications now. But this is all to say it's frustrating. One, it was timing, horrible timing. Rewind. The reality of job searching. Job searching in my mind now is just like real estate, location, location, location. I'm not going to move my family to Atlanta. I don't know if you watch the news. Atlanta's Atlanta. I don't want to move to Atlanta. I don't want to mess with shutting this house down and moving all those things. If we move, it's going to be we want to move, not we need to move. But the reality is, I am in a very constrained job market between Columbus and LaGrange and Opelika and Auburn and remote. Noonan a little bit up there. So that's like strike 1 and 2 really against you because there's only so many jobs in this area. Timing, right? Timing is timing. I did start texting a few people in the firearms industry pre-Christmas, and people were already dipping out on vacation for the holidays. Can't blame them. And the reality is, even if my resume was getting through to a hiring manager, they weren't looking hard at it. They weren't doing interviews. They were biding time till the 1st, until now when they started going. So December's a horrible time to look for a job. Big shocker, right? Timing, location. The reality of 2026, AI/algorithms. I don't know the answer to that. I'm on LinkedIn every day, and I see both sides of the argument, right? I see people saying, hey, we're getting 4,000 applications for a job. We have to use some sort of screening criteria. And then you hear other people say, well, my company does it all, but they're doing the exact same thing just with human eyes instead of a computer eyes, where we're doing person to person. A person is doing the keyword search. You're probably getting a little more leeway with a person doing the keyword search because from what I've been able to put together, people understand synonyms much better than AI does. I saw a great post today. I sent it to my wife. Sorry, horrible videos. And emotionally, the first boss is the ATS. That's the automated whatever system. An emotionally unavailable algorithm that rejects your resume because you used leadership instead of cross-functional stakeholder leadership. And I think there's some reality there, right? And I think businesses don't care. They're fine with a good enough candidate over the perfect candidate. And that's just job searching in 2026. And if you're getting out of the Army right now, especially if you're retiring, I haven't applied. I was thinking about it this morning when I was running. Last time I applied for a job was the summer of 2000. My restaurant job while I was in college. And when I was applying for jobs back then, I walked into whatever business. I said, I'd like to apply for a job. They handed me a piece of paper. I went home and filled it out. I came back and I looked someone in the eye and I handed it to them. And so if you're a child of the 70s or 80s or even 90s, and we're in this completely remote world where, out of 40 jobs in 5 weeks, I've had 6 of them tell me no, and the rest of them are just out in cyberspace. And that's a frustrating place to be, right? Is you have no idea, is this job am I actually being looked at? Am I not being looked at? Should I wait a month, 2 months, 3 months? How long? I don't know. So yeah, frustrating. And then sometimes one part of the company, you think you apply for multiple jobs in a company, one part will say no. And so then you're left thinking, well, is the other part still looking at me I don't know. And most of these companies have websites that you can kind of go back to and look at your resumes, and there's no updates there. With the caveat that once they unlist a job, the hyperlink to the job goes away in some of the websites, not all of them. So it's a fun time to be looking for a job, trying to figure out how to provide for your family. So it's frustrating right now. Like I said, I probably made this video more for me than anybody else. I told myself I wasn't gonna. So I've applied for, how many jobs have I applied for this week? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've applied for 8 jobs this week. That's kind of I have no other metric to go off of, right? And we're metric-based people now. So I told myself I'll apply for 5 to 10 jobs a week. So I've applied for 8 this week. So I told myself when I went to bed last night, excuse me, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I applied for 8 jobs. Told myself when I went to bed last night, I'm really going to be on job boards today. Well, I got up and I got up kind of late and went for a run and then came in here and sat in the computer and got on LinkedIn and just got sucked in. It's worse than Facebook or Instagram or any or YouTube or any of that. And then LinkedIn has a horrible algorithm. If I look for operations leader in Columbus, Georgia, the majority of the jobs are assistant managers at fast food restaurants. Which is, I mean, I'm sure it says operations in there somewhere, but and there's no way to refine the search, and it'll give me it's recommending jobs 4 hours away in other parts of Georgia. So interesting times. So that's my rant. Like I said, this sucks. It's a wake up every day and a kick in the junk, because I can't figure out how to. The rest of your Army career, you're taught to fight through problems and figure it out and figure out how to win, and I haven't figured out how to win yet. Part of figuring out how to win is figuring out why you're losing, and with no feedback from HR people, you have no idea why you're losing. Were you good for this job, but the hiring manager was going to hire their buddy? You never had a chance. I've applied for a couple jobs at Dana Defense, a job at HK, which is here in Columbus. I applied for a job at SIG today. I actually emailed a guy I wouldn't call a friend, an acquaintance that works at SIG, and I'm like, hey man, do I even have a shot as a former officer? And I get it, right? I've met a lot of NCOs, former NCOs in the firearms business, and I'm sitting there scratching my head, going, man, do they see former battalion commander and say no, just because of the reputation that officers have? So if you are looking to go hang out with the NCOs, they're saying no off the bat. I don't know, might be, might not be. I applied for a job at Vortex, and shared emails with a guy I know up there, and I knew Vortex was a long shot because they want everybody local, and I was willing to do a bunch of travel back and forth to be semi-local, but I wasn't going to move the family, at least not immediately anyway. They actually sent me an email back within a week and said thanks, but no thanks. But he's like, hey man, you're probably overqualified. Maybe that's a nice thing to say. Maybe he truly believes it. I don't know, but I think being overqualified is bullshit. I don't want to be a battalion commander again. I got over 3 years of being a battalion commander. I don't want to get phone calls in the middle of the night. I don't want to. I don't want to be doing that stuff, man. I just want to go work and do my job and get paid. I really just kind of want to go do a staff's job. I don't want to be in charge of 40 people, at least not right now anyway. And so I think that's my message back to the Army, right? Is we're taking all of these resources away from our mid-level officers. And man, you're hurting yourself. And at the end of the day, the Army doesn't care. Because like I said, I'm retiring. They don't have to pay me unemployment if I can't find a job. But I'm 20 years removed from college. Even if I had an engineering degree, none of the programs I knew about back then would still be in use today. And I did start out as an engineering major in undergrad, but that AutoCAD and that Fortran and those things we learned, those aren't any good. And oh, by the way, yes, I do have degrees. I've got an undergraduate in education. I've got my Master in Military Art and Science from ILE, like everybody else. I've got a master's degree in history, and I'm 4 classes away from a master's degree in accounting, which, by the way, that was the last thing I want to talk about. Don't get a degree in accounting. If you want to go into the business world, get your MBA. That is the most fire and forget degree you can get. I thought it would be smart to specialize and have a hard skill like accounting, and I was wrong. Getting a degree in accounting, I'm going to talk to some CPAs in the area, but you're still entry level. Accounting, when I got my master's degrees in history, master's degree in history, the professor was like, look, you've now you've taken this class on the Civil War at the master's degree level. So you can now take these notes and teach an undergraduate class on the Civil War. Like it was that level of, that's the way they viewed that in that industry. Accounting is not that way. It is an inch wide and a mile deep. And so until you go out in the workforce and you start to get actual experience, you're not going to get anything. Now, an MBA is the same way from what I can tell. It is an inch deep and a mile wide. I think I might have said it backwards a minute ago. It's an inch deep and a mile wide, but you're exposed to all of these different things. So you speak the language when you go sit in the office and have the conversation. And you can get an MBA focused in accounting. I essentially have an accounting degree focused in business and finance based off some of the other classes I had to take because I didn't have a background in it. But be careful about your master's degrees. IT, engineering, anything IT, engineering, and MBA are good in the business world right now. Everything else, kind of useless from what I can see. Of course, you can go on LinkedIn and you can find someone that writes a really inspiring post of everything someone with a history degree offers. And I actually saw one of those like last week, and it was super inspiring, but it's bullshit. Bottom line is that job description says MBA desired, and Masters of Arts in History is not a substitute for MBA. So location, timing, be smart about your skill bridge. Like I said, I still don't think I made a bad decision. Hindsight being 2020, Pratt & Whitney might have been a good second option here in the Columbus, Georgia area, or somewhere else. But and then figure out how to use AI, which I still haven't done yet, or I'd tell you how to do it. And then I think for the employers out there, every time I drop an application, I get an automatic reply that says, "Hey, thank you for your application." How hard is it to set up an automatic reply when you don't hire someone so they can have some fucking closure in their life? It's probably one of the worst things about job applications right now is I have no idea that if I am or am not being looked at for 30 of the some odd jobs that are on my sheet of everything I've applied for right now. And talking to people, it can be 2 weeks to 2 months before the hiring manager even looks at their resumes. Talking to Pratt & Whitney, talked to a guy out there, got connected to somebody through a Ranger buddy, and they said it can, their hiring process can take 4 months from you submitting the application. So, yeah, it's fun. Sit at home all day with the dogs, feeling like a piece of shit because I can't get a job. Not fun. Hopefully you're doing better than me. Hopefully your job search goes better than mine. I don't know what I'm going to do today. The other problem is it's cold outside. I can't go outside and do stuff. I'm not good at sitting on my ass watching TV. So yeah, hopefully your job search goes better than mine. Hopefully this is helpful for somebody. I doubt anybody will watch or listen to 45 minutes of this. But if this is helpful for you, good. Before you tell me in the comments, I already go talk to a little lady every couple of weeks, and yeah, she's about as helpful as Civil Tap. So we got that going for me, which is nice. Okay, YouTube, good luck in the job hunt. Open your aperture. Location, and be smart about your CSP. Bye.